Okay, I will call this meeting the joint conceptual meeting. That would help. I find these microphones to work a lot better when they're not on mute. So I will call this gathering of the joint conceptual meeting of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and the Franklin Planning Commission to order. The first item on our agenda is to address the way we conduct our meeting tonight. That'll be consideration of Resolution 2021-20, a resolution declaring that the Franklin Municipal Planning Commission and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen shall meet on February 25th, 2021, and conduct its essential business by electronic means, rather than being required to gather a quorum of the members physically present in the same location, because it is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this item?
Is there anyone on the line? No comment.
Okay, no comments. I would entertain a motion to accept that resolution.
So moved. Moore.
Second.
Mayor Moore. And it was seconded by Scott? Michael Orr, I'm sorry. Okay, by roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Franks,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner Lindsay votes aye, Commissioner McLemore, absent right at the moment, Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Orr,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Williamson, Salaji Williamson.
Aye.
Okay. Alderman Berger,
Aye.
Alderman McClendon, absent, Alderman Speedy,
Aye.
was that Speedy?
Aye.
Okay. Your voice has changed, Alderman Speedy. Okay,
Well,
Alderman Martin.
Driving the youngest home, yep.
Okay.
Aye.
Alderman Martin, okay, aye. Alderman Barnhill. Absent right now. Alderman Blanton.
Here.
Alderman Shore. Absent. Alderman Moore. Mayor Moore. You're probably muted, Mayor.
You already called him, Roger.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay, so we have an announcement for limited public access. The Board of Mayor and Aldermen and Franklin Municipal Planning Commission joint workshop will limit physical access in the meeting room due to current limitations on public gatherings to prevent further spread of COVID-19 and to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the City of Franklin officials, staff, and citizens. The purpose of this meeting will be to conduct a project review workshop. No decisions on applications will be made at this meeting. Pursuant to the bylaws, this meeting does not provide for public comment. Therefore, viewing only options will be provided. Accommodations have been made to ensure that the public is able to view the meeting. The public may view the meeting in the following ways: watch the meeting on Franklin TV or the City of Franklin website, or you can watch live stream through the City of Franklin Facebook and YouTube accounts. Limited viewing will be available in the lobby of City Hall for up to 10 persons to watch the live video. Masks are required in City Hall. So item number 2 on tonight's agenda is discussion of a development plan proposing 241 single-family, 108 townhomes, and 136 multiplex units on 232.26 acres located northwest of the intersection of McHatcher Parkway and Hillsborough Road that also referred to as the Brownland Farms PUD. So I'd open to a presentation by the applicant.
I should take myself off mute first. Hi, this is Greg Gamble, and I'm joined in the meeting tonight with Kevin Estes of Land Solutions, and we're excited about the opportunity to be able to present our master plan to you. Brownland Farms is located on Hillsborough Road, and the total property area included in this PUD proposal is approximately 233.5 acres. The main area of the property is currently used for horse shows and events. There are typically 12 horse shows per year with around 2,500 visitors per event. The facility has 350 horse stalls and 8 rinks for competition. We plan to retain much of the equestrian theme throughout the neighborhood to resonate with this history and special place. The development plan for Brownland Farm proposes the integration of Christ Community Church into the neighborhood, the mixture of housing options, and a range of purchase options. The total number of homes has been reduced since our last presentation to a total of 485 homes, and our open space has been increased to a total of 62% of the master plan. There are 2 development plans for your consideration during this review. Brownland Farms will have its PUD development plan, and there is a revision to the Christ Community Church development plan. These will be submitted at the same time and will be voted on separately. Christ Community Church's development plan is staying the same. Their development program is staying the same. However, the land is reduced in size. The new plan improves circulation around the church campus and provides greenway trails and pedestrian circulation. It relocates parking from the side of the church to the rear of the church. This aerial shows the existing parking lot that will be relocated from this side here on Hillsborough Road to the back of the church here. So they'll be provided the same number of parking spaces. The development plan for Brownland Farms also includes an area on the east side of Hillsborough Road, which has been contentious for a number of years. 23 acres of this land is proposed to be a private park maintained by Brownland. At the Poteet Place entry, we are proposing 8 single-family detached lots that are sized to be compatible with the Monticello neighborhood. These are all lots that are outside of the floodplain. On the west side of Hillsborough Road, we have a mixture of home types. 72% of the buildings are single-family home forms. We are proposing 34 multiplex buildings integrated into our master plan. This is an example of a multiplex building consisting of 4 condominiums for sale, 2 units on top and 2 units on the bottom. They have a central main entrance here on the ground floor into a lobby, and then access into the condominiums from that lobby. We are planning to front Hillsborough Road with these multiplex buildings as illustrated here. They will be located approximately 80 feet from Hillsborough Road. The current parking lot that's there now is 60 feet from the road. So as you're driving by Hillsborough Road and you see where that parking lot is, we'll be 20 feet beyond that. The single-family detached homes are shown here, both alley-loaded and street accessed. They're single-family homes along the outer edges. We have open space areas in between for pedestrian access to the open areas. And then the salmon color here on the inside, those are the single-family alley-loaded detached homes. All of the lots you're seeing here are larger than 40 feet in width. They will offer generous front porches and architectural styles that are very similar to West Haven and Berry Farms. And we'll have pockets of townhomes within the master plan to offer additional diversity of home types. Throughout the master plan, we have 3 pocket areas of townhomes that are kind of isolated within the interior blocks, but become bookends along the street. The townhomes will be designed as individual homes on fee simple lots. Our park system is one of the most important aspects of our master plan. The open space not only provides recreation for residents of the city of Franklin, but also incorporates opportunities for river stewardship, restoring ecologically sensitive areas, reforestation, and water quality systems. The Greenway Trail system that you're seeing here is a part of our public park system. This Greenway Trail will be open to the public. We are hoping to have access under Hillsborough Road, parking areas along the street for the trailheads, access underneath Mac Hatcher to a park beyond, and then approximately 3 miles of trail total. You'll notice the trail does continue along Christ Community Church alongside the river. We are planning a nature park on the south side of Mac Hatcher that will include education opportunities, a lake for fishing and canoeing, and a passive pedestrian trail. This white dashed line that you're seeing here along the existing fence row is the back of the lot line of the future neighborhood. So this is where the single family lots would end. And I wanted to show you this so you could see the relationship to Mac Hatcher and also the relationship to the park beyond. This slide shows the existing 100-year floodplain on the property. The Brownland Farm Master Plan will retain 130 acres of this floodplain area. The plan only develops 26%. In comparison, Water's Edge developed 38%, Riser Point developed 25%, Ladd Park developed 25%, and Splendor Ridge developed about 25% of the floodplain area as well. This is consistent with other developments of similar size, similar access, and similar density in the city of Franklin. The city of Franklin requires a compensatory cut and fill of 150%, meaning more floodplain volume is provided after development than was previously on the property. Our current plan proposes to provide 200% compensatory volume. All of the residential lots that are designed on this plan will be designed to be 2 feet above the 100-year flood storm elevation, which is at the 500-year elevation. All of the Harpeth River buffers will be left undisturbed. No construction will begin until FEMA approves the floodplain model. And we have committed to hiring a third-party engineer, CEC, to evaluate our flood study, and that will begin next week. There are various opportunities to implement a river stewardship program on the river, and we plan to do that. We plan to remove all of the fences and barns that are obstructions in the floodway. We plan to restore forests along the river where the ecology and the bend of the river is so important to protect and reinforce. The area proposed for the neighborhood is smaller than what is currently used for the horse facility. This is a dramatic reduction in the footprint and will allow for opportunities for restoration within these open space areas. Most of the property illustrated here in yellow is in shallow floodplain, meaning it's between 0 and 3 feet of depth. These areas where the property will be lowered are shown here in orange and purple. Much of this land to the south of Mac Hatcher along this edge here is currently above the floodplain elevation. And over 60% of the existing floodplain will be left undeveloped. This illustration is from the flood study recently completed. The final grading plan of the property will lower the flood elevation approximately 4.5 inches total in this area shown here in green. There are 3 access points to the neighborhood. The main access point will be at Monticello Road and will be signalized. The second access point is going to be a right in, right out, which is here closest to the river. And we'll have an emergency access through the parking lot area here. But this emergency access will not be gated. It will just be platted as access in the event of an emergency. During a flood event, there is accessibility out of the flood area. down Hillsborough Road to Mac Hatcher and then west toward West Haven. There's a portion of Mac Hatcher that's underneath the floodplain, and right here at Poteet Place is underneath the floodplain. So those two areas there are potentially obstructed by water during a 100-year flood event. And then we know further down Hillsborough Road, as you get toward downtown, there are areas that are under the 100-year floodplain. However, out toward Mac Hatcher going westbound toward West Haven, that new road will be 100% out of the floodplain. With that, I'm happy to answer questions, and Kevin's here as well if you have questions for him.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Will the main house be removed?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
I can't even find it on this map, but.
Yeah, I can go back to this map here. It sits right here. Can you see it?
I see it. I see
It's
it.
right here.
Okay. I'll turn it over to staff at this point.
Sure. Thanks, Roger. So that everyone's aware, staff has always had concerns about the floodplain manipulation on this property. We've been very satisfied with the design of the project itself. Greg and his team have done a great job providing for a mix of housing types and responding to all of our comments about block lengths, perimeters, mix of uses, setbacks in the appropriate areas. So it's staff feels in general it's a very good plan that meets the zoning ordinance. But our concern is the amount of development being proposed in where floodplain is today. I'd like to share my screen for a moment, if I could. Does everyone see that? Yes, okay, thank you. Like I said, we've talked to his team about this before, but it really wasn't until this formal submittal of the development plan that we saw how much land was being manipulated to add homes to where the floodplain is today. This map shows the blue is the flood plain, the dark blue is the floodway. And that also coincides with the conservation design concept in Envision Franklin. And the goal of Envision Franklin these days now says that, I think it's always said this, but we clarified it with Envision Franklin, like with so many other things about our land use plan. We clarified that these areas of the city are natural resources and our floodplain should really be preserved. We should be minimally invasive of them, and we should design around them. This plan, Greg talked about how low the floodplain was in this area, but it still doesn't design around the floodplain. It pushes it back. And also, staff isn't completely, I don't think, on the same page of whether or not this would make the floodplain better. I know Greg talked about it. They're making it better and they're doing all these things, but it seems like they might just be making it different. Staff probably feels that to make the floodplain better, you would simply remove all the stuff that's there today and leave it as it naturally occurs, not necessarily manipulate it. We also have a little bit of concern of where you manipulate the floodplain to putting the new lots right up against that new line. Roger could probably talk a little bit more. I don't want to put him on the spot, but Roger could talk more about how you manipulate the floodplain and how that's not necessarily a guarantee that that's where the water is going to end in any given flood event. So the idea that we're going to put lots right up to that new line might not be the best idea for this new development. And finally, we had some concerns about all of the connections go out to Hillsborough Road. And we know today that that road floods in many places. Greg did mention that you could get out one way potentially. The lowest or the southernmost access point would get you out and onto Hillsborough and up across McHatcher. But again, that's a hope and not necessarily a guarantee, I don't think. And so that's staff's position right now. We wanted to share that with you so that we are transparent and you understand where our current stance is today. Anyone else on the line, Kelly or Jimmy, can add to that if they want, but that's staff's position.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Are there any other comments by staff or? Okay, so with that, let's go to our roll call and allow comments, beginning with Commissioner Allen.
Actually, Amy pretty well, she actually went more in depth than I would. One of the things that I would say is my dad and I had one occurrence with building in the floodplain, and we actually griped about all of the excuse me, the things that the city required us to do. And this was like 25 years ago, and it was in the 100-year floodplain. It was kind of backing up to it. And I'll tell you, when the flood came in 1990, Lord knows we were happy with it. And so I share the concerns that staff have with that, deep, grave concerns, and I'll just leave it at that.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Franks.
Yes, sir, Chairman. Is the blue representative of the 500-year floodplain or the 100-year floodplain?
The light blue is the 100-year and the dark blue is the floodway.
So is the majority of the homes and the density there in the 100-year floodplain then?
The applicant's proposing to move the floodplain so that all of the lots would be outside of the 100-year floodplain.
Yes, sir. You know, we developed Red Wing Meadows years ago, and we were in the 500-year floodplain, and we never had an issue with the 500-year floodplain, even during the 2010 flood there. I don't have a problem with the 500-year floodplain. I do have a problem with the manipulation, maybe, and I don't know enough about it. So it's going to take some real experts to tell us about the manipulation. And as Amy's alluded to, it is a concern. So we'll see how this thing evolves. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Franks. Commissioner Harrison?
Yes, I understand what Amy was saying and for staff was saying, and I comprehend that and the manipulation that'd be required. My question would be, and it might be premature at this point since you haven't got CNC involved with the floodplain, but how is it going to affect below stream and above stream with areas as far as flooding in the past?
Kevin, you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yes. Barge Wagner, or Barge Design Solutions as they are today, Adrian Ward, has done a flood study to ensure there is no rise of the floodplain whatsoever. And I know the floodplain is complicated when we talk about it. One of the things I think it's important to recognize is floodplain is not acreage, it's volume. Floodways, they are very specific and they are determined by widths along the creek, and they determine how water moves. Floodplain, that water where we have proposed the development it is outside of the ineffective flow line. That water we are proposing to manipulate is standing still. It is not moving. So, you know, when we say improving floodplain, if you want to ignore that you got 500 horses there and 2,000 people and all that manure sits along the banks of the Harpeth today, that's okay. But we're providing twice the amount of volume that we are putting in. We are creating volume in the floodplain. And in order to, as Amy said, to make sure that water is not moving or is going where it always is going, that's why we've stayed out of the ineffective flow area. We are not changing. If you looked at pictures of this property of the 100-year flood that happened in 2010, it would very clearly show you we are in the least affected areas on this property. And I believe Greg might even have a picture like that.
I do.
Greg, is that a map that shows the inundation that existed during the 2010 flood?
Yes, sir. Do you mind if I share my screen?
Yeah, and I address the point, that the 2010 generally depends on where you were when the rain fell, but it may not be genuine to describe it as a 100-year flood either. It may be more in the 500-year event or even greater. But go ahead and show me what you've got.
Amy, do you mind if I share my screen? Thank you.
So before you, to follow with my question real quick, if I may, sorry to interrupt. So you're saying at this point, it will not affect current flood levels either below or above
That's correct.
With the flow. Okay.
We are lowering the floodplain level slightly.
I mean, it's still the same.
There will be no rise up beyond us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Oh, it's still disabled.
Okay.
There it goes. There it goes. There it goes. Okay, so this is the 2010 flood, and we have this white boundary line that outlines Brownland Farm property, and it shows the tops, edges of the fields down here, some of the piles that Kevin was talking about. You can still see the vegetation along the fence. The yellow area in here is the development area of the neighborhood, and in a lot of the places you can still see down to the ground, through the water.
I think I do want to add a point about the floodplain manipulation before we get too far along. Envision Franklin tried to make a more transparent stance about how we feel about our natural resources. And the idea is that we should not manipulate them. You certainly can. There's a way to do it. And there's a lot of very smart people that know how to do it and to move the lines and to move the water different ways. I don't think that's the thing that staff is arguing here. I think staff's point is that perhaps this is too much manipulation. It's a question of should rather than can. So it's something to consider. And that's, like I said, those other projects that Greg mentioned that we have previously approved were under a different land use plan that maybe didn't outline that as clearly as Envision Franklin does today.
Thank you, Amy.
One big thing we are trying to understand, and we love the staff and they've been very professional with us, but we've been meeting with the staff on this for 14 months. And if the staff feels like it's too much, I understand that, but can you give us a target? We're sitting here going, hey, we're disturbing 25% of the floodplain and putting it into lot area. Is there a target? I mean, we think we've been on the low end with all the projects that have been approved in the floodplain before. We're significantly less than many of them. Is there a target? Is there a range? Because I feel like there's nothing for us to aim at if we're going to try to find a way to get through this in a positive manner.
I think that's for what this meeting is for that discussion itself.
Yeah, I'd love to leave this meeting with some sort of guidance.
Okay. All right. Just to recognize our time here tonight, I know a lot of people have a lot of comments to make. I'm next in the list, and I'm going to go ahead and make mine. I guess I've expressed my concern over time. My concern that we conform to the requirements of Envision Franklin, I think, is very important. But I believe that there's an appropriate project for Brownland Farms. I think that'll happen. We've been assured that there's going to be, natural tree cover retained along the buffers of the river. And at the community meeting a week or so ago, it was identified that that's a 60-foot wide band of trees. We've had this compared to River's Edge, Water's Edge. I've been out to look at Water's Edge, and what I saw was a fairly vast expanse of low, swampy, water-filled land in areas that probably a lot of that excavated soil came out of. And that absolutely, I don't think, we think people complain at the beginning of this process. Wait till mosquito breeding season gets started when all these new wetlands start realizing the effect of taking out a lot of material for the sake of piling it up, in essence. The issues, we've talked a lot about floodplain. One of my biggest issues is floodway. And Kevin talked about the function of floodway. Floodway is the zone of a river where the highest velocity and the highest conveyance of water takes place. And this project calls for the filling of a floodway in the area that is part of the mapped, adopted flood maps for the city of Franklin. They've been adopted by the city, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. We're going to fill in an entire flow channel of the floodway and build houses on it. I have the sense that a project ought to be structured in a way that allows it to work with the land, not that tries to overwhelm the natural features of the property. The filling of this west split of the Harpeth, that's a flow channel that even at the 100-year level carries over 1,000 cubic feet per second of water across that. And that's the natural flow of that water. That river wants to split at those higher flood levels and travel through that east split and the west split. In a major storm event, the water is still going to want to go back to its old historical course, which is going to put flood water into neighborhoods, into that neighborhood. So I think that filling a natural mapped adopted floodway is bad practice. And as a matter of practice, the city of Franklin ought to not just discourage it, but to deny it. People, a lot of the rain that fell in 2010 fell below this point, downstream of this point. The 100-year flood elevation in Bellevue was 8 feet above the 100-year flood elevation. So we're not governed by a statistical number. We're governed by the amount of rain that falls in an event. And those are my concerns about this. Commissioner McLemore, are you with us now?
Yes, I'm sorry I'm late, but just the issues and just moving so much dirt and the numbers, just the numbers, it just seems like it's just too much for that particular piece of property, and what's going to have to take place as far as moving so much dirt around to achieve the desired result. I know we've got a lot of expert people, we've got expert engineers that can do all of this, but it just seems like it's just so much to involved to have to change this, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have to do all of that to get these units in. I think it's just too many units and too much moving around of the land.
Okay, thank you, Alma. Commissioner Mann?
Yeah, I certainly share the flood concerns. My mind immediately goes towards Houston and seeing what happened there. I know that's on the extreme end, but if we start tinkering with floodplains, manipulating them, that's my concern. But candidly, I'm not an expert in that, but I would need to learn more about that. And I don't want to make resolve one problem and make another problem for neighbors that they really had no hand in this development. But with that said, I do want to point out that I do really like take the floodplain out of it. I really like the design. I like the multi-units. I like that there's townhomes mixed with single family. I think that's exactly what Franklin needs to be able to incorporate multi-levels of income. So I really like that aspect of it. It is just getting comfortable with the floodplain issues.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioner Orr?
Yeah, I think there's one thing we all need to remember about this piece of property. It's not virgin land. They're not clearing forests. They're not filling in wetlands. It's been manipulated over the years for a lot of years now. And a question for the applicant, for the areas that are the single family residential homes adjacent to the Harpeth, what is the depth of fill you're having to add there to get those lots out of the floodplain?
3 feet.
I'll let Kevin answer that, but I do want to point out that the finished elevation of those lots will be at the 500-year level. They will not be at the 100-year level. But
Right.
Kevin,
and I think Scott's talking as an engineer to get from where the existing ground today to where the 100-year floodplain is. The great majority is between 1 foot and 3 foot. We have about 15 acres that is between 3 foot and 6 feet, but the great majority of the, we're basically taking 58 acres of area that sits in the floodplain and about, I believe 27 to be exact, are between 1 foot and 3 foot of fill, with a bunch of it between less than 1 foot. And then the other 21 acres are between 3 foot and 6 foot, with only about 6 or 7 acres as deep as 6 foot. So it is, I know it's complicated. The floodplain sets all these emotions off, but if you look at the slides and you look at all the barns that sit in there today, and you talk about safety, there was a horse show going on during the flood. There was 450 horses. They were able to drive every one of them out and get them into the ag center up at Paynesville Road. So, and the applicant totally legally lawfully under the Ag Act has continued to manipulate that land, because my daughter was riding there 10 years ago, and there's a lot more fill been put in there over time. So this land it's not constantly staying the same. And Robert Andrews.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Kevin. Commissioner Peterson?
First of all, I want to say that when we were talking about the 2010 flood, it was a lot worse downstream from us. I have heard personally a person from the Corps of Engineers at a meeting of the Planning Commission several years ago say that it was not the 100-year flood in Franklin. It was a 100-year flood and worse downstream from us. So please keep that in mind. Another thing that I would say is that the Harpeth, if you're looking at all these pictures, and you really see it here, curves every place. And what happens is that whenever the water gets high enough, it cuts across those curves. I have personal experience on that. In 1975, I was living in a house on Ewingville Drive, and whenever we walked across to the 2-story house next door, we were in the current. We were not, you often hear that the flood fringe is really just backup water. In the case of something like the Harpeth River, again, close to, in Franklin, where it curves like this, it can cut across. I don't really have much more to add. A lot of people have said a lot of things already. Thank you.
Commissioner Szilagyi?
Yeah, I think a lot of the comments are kind of spot on to what I would say. I see floodplains as natural resources. I do acknowledge that this area has been heavily manipulated with the horse farm. But I also see that, there could be improvement, and I think it sets rather heavy on the existing land, meaning of the cut and fill. And I think also kind of what Roger was saying as far as eliminating completely a floodway. And I'm just wondering if this whole development could just sit a little lighter and be a little bit more respectful to what we have existing. Not that it can't be done from an engineering standpoint, but just to, yeah, just be a little bit more respectful to what's existing.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. I'm going to go now to our list of aldermen, and I just want to make a point that we're running 20 minutes behind schedule right now. So everybody make your points, but keep them succinct if I can impose that upon you. Alderman Berger.
I'll just quickly say, I think we need to look at the third-party reviewer. Who's that? CEC, I think, to see what that report says. Let's get that report turned in and take a look at that. Other than that, I don't have another comment. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Alderman McClendon. Alderman Speedy.
Alderman Speedy, you're muted. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I would love to see the FEMA reports. I view this a little bit as, this is not something that's never been done in the city of Franklin. And, I think the Harpeth is a great resource. And I would argue that no one's enjoying the Harpeth River over there on that side of town versus eventually, if this is developed, I could see a lot of people enjoying the Harpeth over there. And now whether or not people want to live near some lowlands or could, fester mosquitoes, that's up to the people buying those homes, and that's the developer's risk. But I don't know. I can go back to, we're probably going to see the numbers on the development report. We've had like 72 single family homes approved since 2017. And I guess we're always finding a reason to not develop. And I just think we need to give them some guidance on what can be done here, because I think a lot of this plan is great with the multiple price points, the different housing stocks. And so I'm just still optimistic that we can get something worked out here.
Great, thank you, Alderman Speedy. Alderman Martin.
Well, I just want to say that regardless of what that flood was in 2010, whether it was 100-year or 500-year or million-year, I don't know. But if we had any more water than that, this whole town would have been covered. And, I hate to belittle that event as something that really wasn't all that great, because it was. And if you were here, it was. And having lived here as long as Ann and I have, we've seen a lot go on that I don't think people realize about the level of the water. And I really like what Jenny said about being respectful to the floodplain. And you mentioned that we had filled in the floodway and built houses on it. I didn't know we had ever filled the floodway. I don't know who in the world was in charge of this city if we filled in the floodway.
Thank you, Alderman Martin. Alderman Barnhill, have you joined us yet? Alderman Blanton.
Yeah, I tend to agree with the majority of Scott's comments. I do think that it needs to be recognized that this has been a project that has started and paused and picked up again. And if it's something we're going to be, I apologize. I think we need to give them some guidance and respect their investment so that we can figure out a solution or not. Sorry about the dogs.
Thank you. Alderman Shore, have you joined us? I don't see you. Mayor Moore.
Yeah, just very quickly, I'm concerned about that 23 acres on the other side of Hillsborough Road. I mean, all that's floodway. And then those lots that are on that side, I have a lot of concern about those. I think a lot of points have been made about the floodway, and I like the way Jenny put it, is that maybe it needs to sit a little lighter on the land. I heard an equine theme, but I never saw one on that. So that's, I don't have anything else to add.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Vernon Girth, I'd like to allow you an opportunity.
Thank you, Roger. Good evening, commissioners and aldermen. I just wanted you all to know that I've talked to Greg and realize where his client Kevin's questions are coming from and spent a lot of time with our team, and Amy and Jimmy accurately reflected our conversations and much of the same things you said. What is too much when manipulating the floodplain? And as you all pointed out, the design, if this wasn't in the floodplain or floodway, it'd probably be approved. And when we get into these areas of our community that offer these types of challenges, then it causes this type of discussion. But it's as much as preserving the natural resource as smart development and growth in the city. And we're set up to allow development to occur on land that is properly zoned in accordance with Envision Franklin that takes into account our other master planning documents. And when we get into this type of discussion, it causes us all these questions. And as Jenny had mentioned, is it too much? Is it too heavy? So I agree that we need to try to provide Greg and his client some guidance, but also this is a heavy and complex engineering exercise that as coincidence, Jimmy, Paul, myself, Shanna just met with TEMA and FEMA to talk about their expectations when development occurs in the floodway and or floodplain, and about the process for a no-rise certificate. And this is a lot of engineering that needs to go in here to make this particular development happen. Can't say it can't happen, but it has a lot of work left to be done.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barnett. We'll go now to our next item, staff, a presentation on and discussion of the 2020 development report.
Amy, do you want to give me control?
You should have it. No?
Share screen, that's right. Okay, yeah, I got it.
Perfect.
I'm gonna do. Can everyone see this okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, great. So, out of respect for our third item, I'm going to try to go through this a little bit quickly. But the way that I'll end up organizing this a little bit is we'll just go page by page for the most part. I'll hit a few highlights on each page, and then give the opportunity for, comments or discussion related to the items that are on that page. I think that would be the easiest. And so we'll just go from there. If anyone needs me to zoom in or whatnot, I'll try to do my best, but I don't know how big it is on everyone's screens. So if it's too small or you need me to zoom in, just let me know. Let's get this out of the way. So we'll take a quick look at our accomplishments for this year. First and foremost being the update to the zoning ordinance, completing our Goose Creek study for the large number of parcels that were annexed in 2019, the beginning of the process for the City Hall redevelopment, and just an overall good job, everybody, dealing with our switch over to virtual meetings and making that as smooth as we possibly can. City at a glance, these are just some quick little facts that are shown elsewhere in the report, but I'll highlight just a few of these. The large annexation of more parcels outside the UGB in the Goose Creek area, 340 of those acres out of the 476 being in the Goose Creek area, as well as 3,143 dwelling units being approved in 2020. The vast majority of these units are in two developments, those being Eastworks and West Haven. And this is a larger dwelling unit total for approvals than we've seen over the last few years. So we'll move along to our Envision Franklin plan amendments for 2020. There were 7 amendments approved, 1 denied and 1 withdrawn or disapproved, excuse me. So we had 9 applications for Envision Franklin amendments in 2020. Any questions, comments so far? Okay, I'll keep going. We had a handful of rezonings this year. This number seems quite large, but there was a change to West Haven, which is 1,500 of those acres. So the rest of the projects were, relatively minor in comparison, but overall the number seems quite large. And then these were the properties that were zoned due to annexation, again, 340 of those being in the Goose Creek area. This year, we included some information from the Board of Zoning Appeals, so variance and appeal requests, which is something new that we haven't included before. But there were 8 approvals and 4 disapprovals throughout the year. 5 of the 8 approvals were for variances, and 3 of them were for administrative appeals. The vast majority of the administrative appeals come from interpretations of different maps, specifically like floodway maps, where the variances, as you can see, are everything from permitting parking spaces in the urban frontage to exceeding setbacks to encroaching into setbacks. So they were just all over the board. And so we'll move into housing. And this is where the meat and potatoes are of the development report. So as you can see here in 2020, we had 3,143 dwelling units approved, 2,100 of these being apartments, and 1,600 of those 2,100s being in the Eastworks development. So as I said at the beginning, the vast majority of these units come from 2 developments, that being Eastworks with the 1,615 and West Haven 694. Anybody have any comments on anything so far? Or discussion points, questions? You'll notice that, this number is very large for apartments, but approximately over the last 3 years, our apartment approvals have been roughly 70% of the overall units, with some being higher. I believe in 2018, it was higher. It was the vast majority of units, where single family houses sit around 6% of overall approvals. You'll see in a few pages, we'll get to where the breakdown, you can see more of exactly how those numbers fit into our existing totals and then our growth for the future. But we'll move on to non-residential approvals. These are everything from just single lot developments, with a handful of banks, different commercial properties, park access, to approved non-residential square footage as almost 1 million square feet of non-residential square footage approved in the Eastworks development, along with their apartments. And then negative 250,000 square feet in West Haven. So they removed some commercial or just non-residential square footage out of the approvals there. There are quite a few pages within the document that show the residential developments that are under construction. We only had 2 developments finish construction in 2020, those being Harpeth Square and Iron Horse. Though we do have a few that are very close to being finished, those being Gateway Village and Ladd Park. So there are just a few that are nearing completion as of now that are major developments. So that's what these few pages are. And so now we get into some of the more interesting stuff. So existing housing here, you can see that we have roughly 36,000 dwelling units in the city of Franklin right now. And the breakdown can be seen here on this chart. The vast majority being single family homes at 56%, and then apartments at 22%. And again, this is existing housing that are completed. So this is where the city stands as of now. Then if we take a look over to the approved housing by type, we have just shy of 11,000 units that have been approved. And this is where there's quite a big shift. Now 54% of the approved units are apartments compared to 11% of the approved units being single family homes. Now West Haven units kind of have their own category because they could be, any one of these different, whether they're single family or townhomes or condos or duplexes. They're not sure right now, so they get a little bit of their own category. But with 54% being apartments, 23 approximately being townhomes, condos, single family at 11, and then West Haven units being 10%. And you can see the breakdown of these numbers up here.
Hey Eric, quick question.
Yes.
If you don't mind. Just to make sure I'm looking at that correctly. So the chart, if you zoom out just a hair, the pie chart on the left is existing as of what date? December 31st?
That's correct.
And then the chart on the right is not what it's going to look like once those constructions are done. That is just what was approved.
That is approved that we have so far. Yep. So if we go on to this next page, this actually leads me in great. We have the future build out, which is the existing plus our approved housing. So this is if everything that has been approved gets built and then added to what we have now, this is the breakdown that we'd be seeing here at the future build out.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. So that leads right into the future build out being roughly 47,000 units. The vast majority still being single family here at 46%. But you notice that the apartment share of the pie is significantly larger there at 30%. Followed by townhomes and condos at 14. And then West Haven units being just a total of roughly 2%. Now, ultimately, when these homes in West Haven do get built, they get categorized into a land use of single family or townhome or condo. So ultimately those find their way into the different percentages once they're actually constructed and we know what they are. So that 2% West Haven units really just represents the approved West Haven units that haven't been constructed and ultimately are still unknown.
Okay, excuse me. That's what I was going to ask you. Why is there a separate West Haven asterisk there? That was my question and concern for you. When West Haven was first approved, that was our concern, that they were always going to stand out like they were a city in themselves, and they're not. They're part of the city of Franklin.
Correct. Yeah. So just because of how they stand now, it's hard to put a number on how many of those units that we know remain within the subdivision are going to be single family, and how many of them are going to be duplexes, and how many of them are going to be townhomes. So they just get this kind of generic designation until they're actually constructed. And once they are constructed, then they ultimately will feed into these different percentages for whatever specific housing type they are.
Eric, I can provide a little insight into that. When the development plan for West Haven first came through back in the early 2000s, maybe late 1990s, it was approved with a total number of dwelling units, but they wasn't approved with a specific breakdown of the type of unit, thinking that they would adjust and propose different breakdowns and different sections of the development plan. So the numbers are not called out specifically by dwelling unit type for West Haven. That's why it's a bit of an unknown until it's actually constructed and added into these charts.
Okay, I'm just sensitive. I was on the board of Mayor and Alderman when they were approved, and that was always an issue.
Any other questions, comments so far on any of the housing information?
Yeah, one of the comments is that if you're talking about the apartments and townhomes, condos, that adds up to the same amount, basically. Well, if you put the duplexes in, it adds up to exactly the same percentage as single family. And some of us can remember whenever the single family was 80%.
Yeah. So as it stands now, if we look at existing housing for what we have today, if we add those three together, that's 34, 37 compared to 56. So ultimately with what has been approved, there is sort of a shift of what's been approved and what is in the future going to be coming online.
Yeah, I would ask the question to Planning Commission and BOMA. Is anybody else bothered by this than me? 70% units approved, apartments, single family homes approved, 6%. Future build out, apartments, 30%, 46% single family home. I've got a big problem with that. We're getting to a saturation point. I think I remember some community, some study a long time ago said that when you get to 30 to 35% of your build outs, or 30 to 35% of your housing stock in your community, when it starts hitting around 28% to 30%, you need to be cautious if you've got that amount that are rentals. I don't know. I think y'all hear this story every day.
Alderman Berger, I'd like to say that part of that skew there is a result of the urban growth boundary and the fact that we are not capitalizing on the infrastructure that leads out to the urban growth boundary, and that you would see a huge decline because those apartment renters would be buying houses out in the urban growth boundary if we would allow the infrastructure to be out in those areas.
Yeah, that's a point of view, Jimmy. Yeah, I see your point, but still at the same time, we've got, we just have a boatload of apartments and a boatload of hotels, and we know where we've been the last year. And I think people need to start having some hard conversations here. I don't, does anybody else want to have that hard conversation? I would love to ask that question.
Well, my point is, if you're going to tax the applicant $20,000 run sewer out on the east side of town, and it's not cost effective or available for a city to help with that, but 10 years from now it'll be $40,000 to run sewer out on the east side of town, and so we're never going to balance the home ownership with the apartments unless we think ahead and bite the bullet now. We're going to always get the tax dollars and and the revenue stream from new growth, but we have to think about the long range plan as we study that 2030, 2040, whatever. But I just know that the reason we're out of balance right now is because we're not expanding infrastructure in the urban growth boundary to the east, urban growth boundary to the southwest, and urban growth boundary, just like we're doing a study now, to the south at the Berry Farms, down to 840.
Jimmy,
And,
I see Marcia shaking her head.
well, okay, just let's put them all in apartments in 12 stories along the interstate. That's fine. Whatever you want to do. I'm happy with that too.
I'd love to hear what Marcia has to say.
Real quick, because we do have to go on, but at our retreat 2-3 years ago, this was a discussion that we started. It was something that I think we all need to get together again and talk about this, because the trend was going this direction. And it's something that we've got to take a hard look at, set hard boundaries, and have enough determination to stick to that. We've got to set a direction, set boundaries, and stick to it. And I'll just shut up.
And in order to do that, I'll just say one comment real quick. In order to do that, we have to have some hard facts, and we need to take a look at these things, and we need to study other communities, and we need to study, some research out there to know what good decisions we do need to make. Thanks.
Staff actually had some facts. Staff actually had some cities that we discussed and we talked about, but we've got to be able to trust facts, trust our staff, and do that. But I mean, we've got to have a vision for our city. We're going to turn into a transient city is what we're going to do. That's my opinion. I'll shut up.
I say we have another retreat and get and resolve some of these issues in the next retreat, that we can all identify the pros and cons.
I second that.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to run out of time. Let's, Eric, please wrap her up.
I'll move us along. But it sounds like ultimately we'll need to have a larger conversation about this, which is not a problem at all. As you can see here, we have a breakdown of our different types of land uses that we have in town. The 27%, being undeveloped, which falls into whether it's agriculture or vacant or just, non-developed land, so to speak. The majority at 35% being residential, and 24% being institutional uses or recreational uses. Our current population estimate that we have based on housing information is approximately 83,852 residents. We don't have the census data from 2020 yet, but that will be coming out later this year, and we can compare the two. And ultimately, the census data will take this slot here in 2020 for next year's report, but it will help us gauge how accurate our estimates are compared to the official census information. And in the final pages, we have some maps, the different approvals, the different residential approvals that are highlighted earlier in the report. You can see where they're located here on this map. Again, the non-residential developments that are highlighted earlier in the report can be seen on this map. And then just our general land use map with city boundaries, and then, the UGB out in this area. So that is the end of the report. So some eye-opening information there with our housing types and the different types of approvals that we had this year. But if anybody has any questions or wants some additional information, feel free to reach out to me, and I can be happy to get that for you. And it sounds like that maybe sometime in the future we'll be having a housing conversation.
Great, thank you, Eric. So to maintain our schedule here, does anybody have a short comment they'd like to make? Planning commissioners, Marcia, Jimmy, several of you have made comments. You've already had your turn.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman.
Commissioner Harrison.
I would just like to
Yes,
say,
Jimmy.
yeah, I think probably getting and talking about this a little together and talking about it a little bit more, we'll see benefits.
Good. Okay.
Roger, it's Scott. I like Jimmy and Bev's idea. I think this wants a retreat where we can ever sit down and spend half a day talking about it.
Agreed.
Here, I agree that it's going to take a lot more conversation than the 15 or 20 minutes we've attributed to this tonight.
Right. I agree. And part of that discussion, from my perspective, you hear me talk about density all the time. The cost of infrastructure, the cost of building wastewater treatment plants is staggering. And all of that needs to be part of this workshop. Any of the aldermen still have comments if you haven't had a chance to speak yet? Alderman Speedy, Alderman Martin. Any other comments?
Nothing else to add.
Okay. Okay, let's move.
Real quick, it does look like Annette jumped on our call. The lovely design of the report was done by Annette again this year. So all compliments to how good it looks can go to her. I just did the numbers and whatnot. So
right. Thank you. Thank
you, Annette.
Okay, our item number 3 today is a discussion of an Envision Franklin amendment requesting a change from conservation subdivision design concept to multifamily residential design concept for property located at the intersection of Sawyer Road and Linwood Way. And this is the Buckley properties. So I'll turn it over to staff.
I think the applicant can start.
Okay, let's turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you. My name is Greg Gamble, and appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion with you tonight. Also joining me in the meeting is Austin Pennington with Barlow Builders. I'm going to share my screen. This is the Buckley property owned by Al Buckley. It's 60 acres in size. It's right off of Linwood Way and directly north of Gateway Village. We're discussing this with you tonight because prior to the road improvements on Franklin Road and an investigation of the sewer main that goes along Franklin Road, we don't believe that this proposal or this discussion really had a lot of merit. But now that those two items are better understood, we believe that this is a conversation worth having. The Buckley property is located just north of Linwood, right at the edge of the city of Franklin's boundary. As a matter of fact, on the right side here is the city of Brentwood. To the north is Williamson County, and to the west is Williamson County. So it is right at the edge and right at the end of the city of Franklin city limits. It is also at the edge of the sewer basin that flows through Gateway Village, down Franklin Road, through Legends Club Golf Course. So there is no other property west, north, or east that would have access to the city of Franklin sewer. This property has two policies. One is the conservation policy, which consists primarily of the Hilltop Hillside overlay, and conservation subdivision policy. The conservation policy makes up 66% of the land at 38.65 acres. And the conservation subdivision policy makes up 34% of the land, or 20 acres. Today, there are 3 building types that can be constructed. And yes, you saw this earlier from another presentation, but it was a good example of what this multiplex building is and how it can be defined. So we got permission to use it. The single family homes, multifamily duplexes, and the multiplex building. So these are the 3 building types that are currently supported in the policy. We do not plan to abandon these building types. Matter of fact, we would like to have a master plan that incorporates these building types into an overall neighborhood. This property that we're looking at here is in a valley. It is surrounded by beautiful hills, and one of the requirements of conservation subdivision is that at least 50% of the land be set aside in preservation in perpetuity. Well, with the HHO restrictions on the property, that's going to happen. 66% of this property will be set aside in preservation. So that box is certainly checked. What we're asking for is your consideration to allow us to incorporate into the master plan townhomes and condominium buildings that would have more than 4 units, 6 to 10 to 12 units within the building, and incorporate it into a neighborhood so that we have a mixture of housing types beyond what's allowed in conservation subdivision, to have a mixture of price points that really go further into what our workforce here in Franklin needs. Right now at Gateway Village, there are single-family homes, there are townhomes, and there are multifamily buildings that are both condos and apartments. So this is not out of character with what's constructed directly across the street. Now, we're not asking for a mixture of commercial uses. Gateway Village is neighborhood mixed use. It has multiple building types, but it also has restaurants, commercial, retail, office buildings, and located directly across the street at the Buckley property, a neighborhood would be able to have convenient pedestrian access. We've looked at the development area on the property, excluding or removing those naturally occurring slopes that are 14% or greater. There's about 17 acres that's left that's developable. In talking with city engineering and city planning staff, there were really 2 major concerns that rose to the surface. And one was the city of Franklin is going to require minor repairs to the sewer infrastructure along Franklin Road. We understand what those are. Those have been fully analyzed. We have been in long conversations with the Water and Sewer Department and have a good handle on what those improvements are going to be. The second is that we need to have 2 points of access to Linwood Way. Sawyer Road is this kind of serpentine road right through here that comes all the way up to the north and gives access to 2 single-family homes. We would like to not access Sawyer Road as a part of any kind of future development. So you can see the light green area in here. There are steeper slopes, so it's best if we could stay off Sawyer Road. We want to protect it and keep it as the road that it is today. What we do need to do is, you see this access point right here into Gateway Village. This separation is not enough. We need to realign the road so that it accesses Linwood a little bit further up. Lastly, there are 2 potential points of access to Linwood Way. You can see slopes in through here, but with a serpentine road, we would be able to follow the terrain, the topography to access Linwood Way in the second location. There are other examples of multifamily within the corridor of Franklin Road, Cool Springs. Y'all are very familiar with Dwell, Avenida, Iron Horse, Artesa. What stands out to us on these 4 developments that are multifamily is that they're just apartments or they're just rental. There's not a mixture of housing types within those developments. However, at Gateway Village, there is. And if we took this portion of Gateway Village and put it on approximately 17 acres, you could start to imagine what a master plan that would have a mixture of housing types might look like. We don't have a master plan yet. We wanted to have this discussion with you first. We believe that this is an excellent opportunity and a little enclave to create a little village within this valley that would really support Gateway Village and the businesses that are in there, but would also complement this area of Franklin. With that, we are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Staff, do you have any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I appreciate that.
Do you want me to leave this up or do you want me to stop sharing, Andrew?
Oh, you can leave it up.
Okay.
The staff has concerns about this amendment. Being the northernmost property in the city limits, it means it borders rural properties in the county and low density residential in the city of Brentwood. Multifamily uses on the site would create an abrupt change in massing, scale, and density. And we don't think it provides an adequate transition to the rural character that you find along Sawyer Road. So the staff also has concerns about access into and out of the site and the viability of a second access point onto Linwood Way, given the steep terrain. Overall, the land use plan and even the previous land use plan was set up such that a node was created at the intersection of Franklin Road and Moores Lane, mostly including Gateway Village, but also some of the properties going south along Franklin Road. And that's really the area planned to accommodate the higher density development. So the staff will be recommending a deferral at the March Planning Commission meeting due to missing the 30-day public notice requirement by a single day. But ultimately the staff will be unable to support this amendment request because this location is not appropriate for the high density multifamily uses. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, great. Thank you, Andrew. So I'll move to our roll call. Commissioner Allen.
Aye. I moved. Soda, roll call soda first. There's not even I'm totally, yes. I actually agree with what Andrew said. I was already thinking about that with this area and all of that. And so I actually agree with this area. And in light of our conversation with having such a high density multifamily project in this area. So definitely we need to discuss this and not in support of this at this point.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Franks.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any comments or questions?
I think it's a great plan. So let's see what happens.
Great, okay. Commissioner Harrison.
No comments at this time.
And I'm a little concerned for the density and the massing in there at this point. So Commissioner McLemore.
Well, I have similar concerns, but when we talk about, we just had a discussion about the apartments, and if we could at least have more townhomes and not have so many more apartments being brought before us, that might help as well. But right now, those are the other comments, the only comments that I have at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Mann?
Yeah, I'd like to see a rendering of what we can do with single family homes on that site. With it being on a hill, I'm also concerned that if we do multifamily of multiple stories, that's really going to stick out from a view perspective driving down the road. I think a single family a low profile house might fit better, but I'd like to see that.
Commissioner Orr?
Yeah, I've driven out there, and the area is essentially off in a hole when you're going down.
Yes.
But that being said, in my opinion, it's too far off the interstate corridor to have that much density. I'd much rather see it single family residential.
Good, okay. Alderman Peterson?
No other comments at this time.
Right, okay. Commissioner Salachi?
I just say exactly what Mike Orr had said. Just too far off the corridor for that sort of density.
Right, okay. Alderman Berger?
Well, if it's too far off the corridor, I don't know what we're doing with Gateway. Gateway's got a lot of density over there. It's right across the street from it. Honestly.
Right.
They have one across the street, one not across the street. I don't know. But
I agree with you, Ms. Berger.
Yeah, I'm like, wait a minute. I think there's major density over there.
And if anybody's been in there, they need to go look at it because it is appropriate for a perfect spot for affordable housing and price point driven housing.
And I'll tell you, people ask me all the time, can we get more townhouses? Can we get more townhouses? Can we get more townhouses? They want to sell their homes, but they don't want to rent. They want to buy. They want to downsize. They want some of these things. And I went up and looked at that property, and I tell you, it's a little Shangri-La back in there. You're not going to see it. You're not going to see it at all off of the road. So you got an opportunity to put some density back there and make it. And what do we talk about in this board all the time? Design. So, you know, it's all about a good design. And I'd like to see some more for sales back there. But I drove that property and I'm like, single family homes, you're not going to get very many back there. And the way the terrain is, I think you could really develop some townhomes. I sort of like, it may need some work, but I sort of like the idea. And I sort of like the design and everything they have, but I like the idea.
Okay, great. Is Alderman McClendon with us yet? Okay, Alderman Speedy.
Yeah, I would probably agree with Alderman Berger and Commissioner Franks. I mean, if you almost have to go see this property. And I know that staff talks about preserving the rural character. I mean, there are no neighbors. There won't be any neighbors. Those hilltop overlays are going to be protected, and no one's going to see it unless you actually drive in off of Linwood Way. So I would like to see some single family townhomes, the ownership units. But I think it's going to preserve that open space because they have to.
Okay, great.
I would, Commissioner Chair, I would like to point out that the request here tonight is to change the design concept to multifamily. Just wanted to point that out based on some of the previous comments.
Okay. Alderman Martin.
I don't have any comments at this time.
Okay, Alderman Barnhill, have you joined us? Alderman Blanton.
Commissioner, maybe go back to Amy's comment. So right now, they want to amend it so they can allow townhomes. So
no,
is there
the request is to go to multifamily, which means that they want to be allowed to do more than 4 units per building. Greg did mention that the units would be 6 to 10 units per building, but that's multifamily, which is currently not allowed in their design concept. The design concept today is conservation subdivision, which allows for, Andrew, help me out, quads, duplexes, and single families. So those are allowed today under the Envision Franklin. What's not allowed is—
What design concept would allow similar housing types that are at Gateway without the commercial? Are they forced to go multifamily if they want to add that 8 complex or 10 complex?
Mixed residential would allow for townhomes, but multifamily supports all of the residential uses.
So it would support all residential uses, including single family. And then if that design concept was changed, then it would be up to the Planning Commission in BOMA to approve the PD, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, they would have to rezone.
And there's a couple differences. Conservation subdivision says that single family residential is the primary dwelling type, and secondary dwelling types can be duplexes and big houses with up to 4 units in each building. Multifamily allows all the way up through multifamily apartments with no breakdown or prevalence of one dwelling unit type over another. It's very wide open. Mixed residential is the same in that there are single family, duplex, big house, or townhouse, and they're all even too. So it's more of a mix of residential dwelling types.
Alderman Blanton. Sure, I see Alderman Blanton. Alderman Shore, still not here. Mayor Moore.
It's an intriguing piece of property. It is like a little Shangri-La. It is down on the hole. I'm intrigued by some of the opportunity in it. I think we need to be looking at it a little bit more moving forward. let them brainstorm it a little bit more with us.
Right, thank you. I think another interesting comparison might be to look at those different types that Kelly just described for us, so that we see how the different opportunities would be manifested on that particular piece of land.
Chairman, due to the fact that there is a delay, it might be worth time, if you're acceptable to it. We could explore some options of a master plan and what that might look like, if it's not a waste of time, and maybe talk about those next month, since we have a month delay in the land use plan vote at the Planning Commission. And we appreciate the floor, the ability to have this dialogue with you. Obviously, we don't want to waste anybody's time, but we do see an opportunity here for a really exciting master plan that does integrate a lot of different building forms, building types, and we would love to come back to the next joint conceptual workshop maybe and present a few options and some master plans to continue the dialogue, if everyone thinks that might be worth the time.
Okay, thank you, Greg.
I can support that. I think that would be good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd be curious to see.
Chair, Roger, I have a question.
Yes.
Is someone from legal? Well, I have a request for staff. I have a question that I would like, if you could email me the answer. My question would be, first of all, we've talked about having a retreat. My question is there any way, is it legal for us? Because I know they've done something like this in Brentwood. So I'm just posing a question, because as we go on, we're gonna have more and more requests. And I have a deep concern about our multifamily overtaking us as far as single family, because this is happening. Every meeting we have, we're gonna have more and more multifamily requests coming in. My question to legal is it legal for us? Could we impose a moratorium on multifamily construction or multifamily approvals? Just a simple question. Everybody, please don't go out and jump off buildings because I asked this question, commissioners and aldermen and citizens of Franklin. Just a question. I'd appreciate an answer. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Marcia.
We will check into that.
Okay,
Thank you.
That concludes our agenda for tonight.
Chairman Lindsay, do you mind if Austin Pennington makes a comment?
Sure, very quickly.
Hey everyone, good evening. Thank you so much for your time today. So many great points brought up, to say the least. I think the overwhelming thought, many of you on this Zoom call today have been to the property. And I think the overall consensus is once you see the property, you understand what we're talking about. And furthermore, when you see the property, you also understand all the road construction at Franklin Road is now going to be 4 lanes. You understand that you're less than 2 miles to the interstate. You are in a valley. So there are a lot of concerns that when you see the property are alleviated. I think another gentleman mentioned the fact of, the additional cost of sewer pump stations, sewer facilities. There's no impact. This above is no impact to current infrastructure. There are a lot of positive things where, in my history of developing all over Middle Tennessee, from Hendersonville to Columbia, as far as Bellevue over, where we haven't impacted something. It's in my experience with, 4 lanes going to the interstate, 4 lanes going to Brentwood, you're in a valley, you're not impacting water, you're not impacting sewer, and you have the ability to leave 66% of the property as Radnor Lake. I would encourage you, if you've been to Radnor Lake, put that in your head when you go out to the property. You're about 30 feet below Linwood Way. All the trees that you see on Linwood Way would all stay. It almost would be virtually impossible to see it. I encourage you to go now with all the leaves gone from the trees to actually see what could be seen from the road and vice versa. So in a quick time, I would encourage everybody to spend 5 minutes, drive out there and take a look at the property. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. So with that, that concludes our agenda for this meeting. So we will call this, I don't need a motion to adjourn this, do we? No.
So moved.
All you planning commissioners, I'll see you again in about 20 minutes. Thanks a lot.